according to this computer. Okay, bonsoir tout le monde. Oh, hello everybody. My name is Avery Rube, and I am here to present the beginning of our speaker series at Vanier called "Why Can't School Be More Awesome for Everyone?" The idea is that we're bringing in people to talk about their experiences with school, what they liked about school, what they didn't like about school, what we can change about school, and the overall goal is to help you to realize that there are different ways of doing school. Maybe you're happy with the way school works, but if you want to find different ways or want to look at different ways, there are different ways of looking at school. And these people who are talking in the speaker series are really presenting that. And then to have a wider discussion and keep the conversation going after all these talks. So if you're listening out there in podcast land or in YouTube land, great. You can always contact me at Vanier. I'll put my email address into the description for both the podcast and for the YouTube. And I will introduce Sandrine, who is a wonderful human being. She is an environmental activist. She does a lot of great things that are very hard to do. And she also stopped going to university because she found in some way, she's going to describe this, that school didn't really answer her needs. And from there, she has kind of paved her own path. And she's going to talk a little bit about that path and how school fit in and how it didn't fit in. And then we will keep the conversation going with some questions. So Sandrine, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Avery. So hi, my name is Sandrine, and I'm actually a climate justice activist for, it has been at least 7 years now. So I thought a lot about how to present this talk and how to talk about how education has shaped my path. And I thought it was through experiences and different moments in my life that education maybe led me to this decision of doing activism full time. So I thought I would share those experiences with you today to showcase how I think experiences and learning is not just in between the four walls of school, but also outside in our community. And actually, it started very early on. I started getting involved in school when I was in high school, actually at like 12, 13 years old, doing all the clubs and like the student assembly. And I really thought for me, school was more than just a place to learn, but also a place of community. And I think that perspective was always within me, but I think it really shaped how I view education and how I view my place in the world. So, of course, throughout all my high school, I was very involved in all the school activities. I was doing sports and social clubs. So it was very like a big part of my life. And it was really through the World Social Forum back in 2016 that I got out of this community created in high school and really started getting involved outside as well. And through those experiences at that age, I think it really shaped how I view like our current education system, because those experiences made me someone with more capacities, social capacities, and also communication skills. And it really helped me build up my skills for entering the adult world. And after the World Social Forum back in 2016, when I was 16 years old, I really started getting involved outside with different organizations. And it led me to, in 2018, with the Climate Fridays for Future March, which is the movement where we march every Friday for climate justice. It started in 2018, and then it go on until the pandemic, and it's still ongoing, but like in a different type of mobilization. But through all those experiences at that time and right until the pandemic, I was actually in university at that time. I was studying international relations, and I was actually facing the reality of it through my activism, because I had the chance to go to COP25 in Madrid, which is a conference of the parties from the United Nations. And it's the place where the Paris Agreement and other agreements regarding climate change policies are being created and voted and ratified. So it was actually what I was studying in school and then taking it in reality and how it was applying. And actually, when I got there at COP25, I was stunned by everything because I saw greenwashing, I saw ongoing colonization and exploitation of the global South. I saw a place of lobbyism. And actually, I was very stunned by the inaction of our international relation and international law. And because I was a student in that, I realized how this experience changed me because I realized I didn't like this path. I actually didn't believe in it. And through that experience, and thank God I had it, because I would have stayed in this course of study and I would probably be unhappy. But having those experiences outside of school made me develop my reflections, my values, my ideas furthermore. And actually, throughout this conference, there's different things happening during COPs. There's like negotiation room between countries. There's also like a civil society discussing, sharing experience of climate realities throughout the world. There's like a lot of things happening at the same time. And one of the things that is happening is press conferences of anybody that wants to share something. And actually, we saw on the register, my friends and I, that there was a conference with the IPCC scientists, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So it's actually the scientist that gathers all the climate information, all the research, and put it in 5 models of global warming and climate change impacts. So it's really like the biggest organization of scientists that does great work towards like responding to climate change. And so we were like, oh, great, we have to go there because that's the base of our activism, is to let the science speak, and because we need to listen and understand the science. So we went there and actually nobody was in the room. And we felt like it was a bit of a caricature of reality because it was, again, the youth listening to the scientists and being the only one there. And throughout this 30-minute press conference, because it's very fast and there's always press conferences, the scientists explained to us the reality of climate change and where we're at and where we're going towards, and the global warming of 1.5, which is leading to like tipping points and other climate problems, because once we hit the 1.5, the tipping points will start to ignite. And like, for example, one tipping point is the permafrost that is melting, that would lead more methane in the atmosphere and then causing more climate change and more climate disruption. So listening to all that in a 30-minute conference where nobody else in the world is there, and like listening to the highest scientists working this for like 30 years or more, we really felt like a reality check of the situation. And actually, I would like to share a quote that the scientist said at the end in conclusion that actually shaped where am I right now. So start quote, he said, I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that, end quote. And this quote, I took a photo on my phone and I kept it because it really struck something with me. Because I know scientists, they were made to be objective, to state facts and nothing else. But I believe there's other ways of gathering knowledge, and that was what the scientist was saying. It was, we need emotion and we need people that are able to build those bridges between like science and other humanities. And I wanted to do that. So after COP25 and throughout the pandemic, I actually switched my studies. I decided I wanted to do environmental science. So I got the credit I needed from CEGEP and I started my baccalaureate in environmental science. And sadly, the reality after that was that the curriculum was actually not fit for my level of knowledge that I learned through experiences before that as an activist. For example, during my climate change policy class, we were only studying policies that were obsolete, which was the Kyoto Protocol, and we're not studying the Paris Agreement. So we didn't even prepare the future scientists to understand the actual climate policies going on right now and until 2030. And I felt completely hopeless because I felt I wasn't prepared through school to like tackle the biggest problem of our time. But my experiences as an activist led me to understand actually the Paris Agreement. It actually lived it through COPs and through marches and through vulgarizing this information to the public as like a speaker and activist. So actually, after a couple of events like this throughout my courses, I was actually a couple of credits away from my degree when I was hit again with another absurdity that I actually didn't have the time to finish my doctorate, which is the level of study like socially acceptable to become like a real scientist, to be a spokesperson. And before we hit the 1.5 degree warming, which is 2030, and it's tipping points, because actually what the science says is that we need to top our global emissions in 2025 and then decrease them by 40% until 2030. So I realized that actually the crucial years to mobilize and act as much as I can, they were standing in front of me right now. And I felt like the time I was using to put in my studies, I actually used that time to mobilize right now. So that's why I'm standing in front of you today, is because I chose to hit pause on my studies and do activism full time, because I believe that that is what we need right now. I believe we need people to mobilize with us. And I believe that we need more than just social change. We need something that is more deepened within us. We need something that is more cultural and spiritual. So to end my little story time, I actually have one quote that I want to share as well that really I keep close to me right now. So it's a quote by Buckminster Fuller, which is an architect. And he says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing one obsolete." There you go.
It's very interesting what you said. Can I ask you a question about, could you, and I know that, environmental activism is your thing. I just want to bring it to schools a little bit. Could you imagine a doctorate program where activism was at the heart of your work, and that by doing stuff and writing about it, but writing blog posts and writing press releases and creating working with, inventors who've got new projects and, trying to talk to scientists and vulgarizing the material. Could you imagine? I understand that maybe that doesn't exist, but imagine if something like that did exist, and you could get a doctorate from it, and it was, reputable, and it was legitimate. Could you imagine? Would you be interested in doing that, or do you feel like the doctorate doesn't have any value anyway because of all the stuff you have to do? I don't know if my question was clear.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would be a honorary doctorate. I think it may happen in some other ways, but I think it's a great question. I think we don't recognize the value of knowledge through experiences. And I think that we need to make that knowledge more legitimate in like academic space, because it's not because I learned it by myself that it's not truth, especially with climate science, because it's stating facts. So I actually took the time to learn about it, and now I'm stating it. But I think actually it's more, it's a whole reflection of our school system, because I think right now, the only way that our school system works is like on how to form productive people. And that's what I felt actually throughout my program. I realized like the first idea I got for writing a paper, I got to take this one and I cannot think to something else because I have to get it done because I have another paper to write after that. And I think that's one of our biggest problem right now is that we don't let the students have time to reflect. And because of that, they use the first idea they got and they have to produce something before. They know they're going to vomit information and forget about it. And they know the information will be read only to be corrected and that's it. And we lost so much value and knowledge and like a possibility to be creative and innovative because right now the structure.
And impactful. I would just like to add impactful.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, impactful. And I think it's a construct from our capitalist system, like creating mass production and yeah, I think we really need to reshape that. And we really need to take the time to think about it.
Okay, I would just like to say that school, the way that you know school, it doesn't have to be that way. There's other models, and through these talks, we're going to get into that. But the idea of having impact, the idea of having time and being creative and getting to choose and working on my choices and pushing forward things that are interesting to me that are interested that I want to bring to the world. It's very possible to have that in a school curriculum. It's just that we have another system which is kind of more like just like producing widgets. I got to push out this paper, the teacher grades it, and we go forward. It's not the only system, but I understand what you're thinking, that's what you've seen and you feel like that's all there is. I think through the other talks we'll get into more choice and other options that are out there, because for instance, Gwenola's school Educare really is focusing on impact. The idea is that everything you're doing has to have an impact in the community. We're building up capacity to be able to do that for all students, because it takes a little bit of time, especially students who come from the other system who think, oh, I just got to write this for the teacher and then I go on to something else. But it is possible to have a system that is about impact and the learning from the impact, and that's the development of knowledge and the development of skills. How do I collaborate with people? How do I critically think about what I'm doing? How do I be creative to come up with solutions that are maybe no one's ever thought of before? All while I learn science, and I learn the math, and I learn the history of anything that I'm interested in. For instance, climate activism. Sorry, I spoke for a very long time there. Have you ever seen a learning environment, or could you ever imagine a learning environment that you would feel excited to go into? Maybe not now because you have so much, so many other things you're doing, but could you describe how something, a learning environment might look to you that you would think would be useful to you at this age, or maybe even younger or later?
That's again, a good question.
Stuff.
I think, well, that I speak personally, but I think education is not only just one form or one type or one structure. I think it's an ecosystem of learning. And I believe I'm actually living in that ecosystem, because right now, the different type of ways I'm learning is either like the most basic one being autodidact, which is learning through books, learning through documentaries, videos, research. So that I do on my own, but also there's another level of that is when I learn this information, I don't just keep it to myself. I actually go and discuss with other people, my community, my friends and activist friends, and we actually share that knowledge. We actually critique that knowledge. We actually discuss it and bring it forward. And after that, we draw conclusion and consensus, and then we maybe apply it in our real life through activism or any other thing. And this, for me, is a way of learning that it really, really helped me, and that really fit with the way my brain works, actually. Because in school, I was always not attentive, because for me, it wasn't going fast enough. And I know it's different for everybody, but for me, like the question the students asked in the room, I was like, I know this. I don't need to hear it again because I know this information. And for me, it was a way that I didn't feel like school was like form for my way of learning. So that's why I became more like a self-learner. And actually, that's what I did through university, because I chose like an online university that you go on your own pace. I actually got almost got my degree quicker because I went to my pace and because I sometimes confirm knowledge I already learned through experiences and then brought it in the academic form. But for like the future, how I imagine education, I think like school obviously has a place, but I think we gotta shift the perspective that school is the only way that we can educate citizens. I love this quote, and I forgot the person who said it, but it was like, every children born after you is a product of the dedication that you gave to society. And even though I'm only 23, I believe that like all the children I saw and I spent time with, actually in a small part, I've been part of their education. And if we shift that perspective that we need to evolve as a society together, it will therefore be more inclusive, be more respectful, and I think it's like a more sustainable path as well.
I agree. I don't know how else to say it. Very much.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is very interesting. And again, throughout all these talks, what I want to say, if you can come to the next talk, I know you probably have other things to do, but it's really about a school where there is a lot of choice. There is different paces because some students might go quickly in some things, but they might go slower in other things. And this idea of, oh, it's 45 hours, and at the end of 45 hours, we're all taking a test. If you get 60%, you move on. If you get 59, you don't. Whether those are even different, and you don't know 40%, but you didn't know 41%. It's not in a system that is effective for learning. And even what is an 80%? Hey, I got an 80%. What the hell does that even mean? It doesn't even mean anything. So this talk in the next hours is all about this. But I agree with you, your frustrations, and so I can see why you've done what you've done. Giérula, est-ce que tu peux poser une question en français? Est-ce que tu veux savoir quelque chose? Yes, go.
Est-ce qu'il y aurait une compétence ou des compétences que tu penses que tu as apprises à l'école dans un cadre qui ne te convenait pas, mais dans ce cadre actuel, au secondaire, au cégep ou à l'université, qui te sont utiles aujourd'hui et que c'était important d'être exposé dans le cadre scolaire à ces compétences?
Oui, je vais te répondre en français pour ça, oui.
I'm just going to do a quick translation just in case there's only Anglophones out there. Giérula asks, is there a skill or some knowledge that she learned in school, even if it didn't work perfectly for Sandrine? Did she learn something in school that is useful or has been useful over time? So like maybe looking back and say, what did work for you in school? Go for it.
I will answer in English then. I think that would be like a very nerdy answer to that, but I think research and methodology, I think were like the two main components that really helped me. I had the luck to be throughout high school in an IB program, which is like International Baccalaureate, which is like more like education that is a bit broader with like the perspective of like citizen of the world and like doing a voluntary work. So with that, there was a big emphasis on methodology, and actually in secondary 5 we needed to do like a personal research throughout the year on our own. And actually those experiences helped me through CEGEP because I was in advance in like understanding methodology and understanding the better way to research something. And until this day, I think it's a skill that unfortunately is not always learned through school or not in the same level I had. But for me, it really helped have like a rigorous skills for research and methodology. And I think that is very important because especially in this time when social media and just like news in general are very like take a lot of our time and our attention, and there's a lot of information out there, and it's very difficult to like see what's truth, what's not, and like to build up a critical thinking about it. I think those skills were very necessary, and that I'm grateful.
Can you tell us a little bit more? Where did you learn this? Was this more in CEGEP? Was this more in university? What in that process, what worked for you, and what did you think maybe that other schools or other teachers should kind of keep doing? I know we've talked about things that we shouldn't keep doing. I get that, but I think this is a great question too. What have you thought was something that was worthwhile to keep?
Well, it started in high school for like methodology and research, and I think it was really like throughout secondary 4 and 5. Like I said, the IB program is really based on like developing those skills. So obviously, like throughout every class, we have the same methodology and research practices to keep on doing. So I think with repetition and like routine, it really helped because it became something natural. And that I didn't realize it became something natural until like I went to CEGEP, and then I was working with students from other schools, and then I realized how important that skills was given to me, even though at the time we were like, oh, methodology, we don't like doing this, taken an hour more to finish a paper, but that I really saw the difference through CEGEP. And for me, I think it was very throughout the research in secondary 5, because it's the first time you need to write a big paper, do a big research like throughout weeks and even months. So really not only gathering the knowledge, but filtering it and structuring it, and then like putting it all in good form. I think it was, yes, a hard experience throughout at the end of the high school, but also one that really helped me. And after throughout CEGEP, I really saw like this rigidity of like doing the research and methodology really helped me throughout CEGEP. And I was doing like nine classes at a time, because I actually had like an experience to going in England for the first semester. So I needed to catch up for the rest of my CEGEP year and doing 9 classes per semester, which is more than the normal. And actually, I didn't really realize the pressure because I was so like able to work in an environment that was very structured because of what my school did. And how did they implement methodology and research? I think it was, through routine practice and just explaining to us the reason why. And I think something that is maybe something we sometimes miss in class or through our education system is to explain to students why this information is important. And I do this a lot with like when I do workshops, and I explain, okay, today we're gonna learn about this, and why do we need to learn about this is for this and this reason. And I think sometimes, especially right now, like the attention is going, we're losing attention really fast. But when you explain like, okay, yes, it's going to take 30 minutes of your attention, but see what you're going to get at the end of it as a knowledge or as a skill. And I think that may be a way we can like improve this, is by stating the objective. And maybe it's not going to work for everyone, but I think it's a way to be more transparent and to like see from the perspective of the student, how can it benefit them? Because sometimes it's hard to see.
Yes, I think that this idea of impact, once the students understand that I do this and I have an impact, maybe I publish a paper in a small review, or I send my paper to 5 scientists who give me feedback, or I go and present in a conference. The idea is that when we see the reality of our work as students, even as adult students or younger students, I think that that's motivating. I think this idea of just giving it to the teacher and then saying A, B, C, D, or F is less motivating. So I think that the explanation of why is really wonderful when there's actually a real project that's put out to the world. I think sometimes the why, when it's just, hey, trust me, I'll tell you this really works that way, it can be hard for some students to make that bridge. But if we could combine those two, at least in my experience, is that's when it really starts to hit, especially when someone is very convincing like you, like, hey, it's not that I think about this stuff, I do this stuff. So I think one of the things that schools can do and is to match up the passionate and experienced, experts, and they don't have to be teachers, they can come in and just teach a workshop. Then the systematic learning, where there's development of knowledge and development of skills, and then there's the idea of the impact afterwards, where I go and really put this out to the world, and the world tells me whether it was worthwhile or not. And not that it's not worthwhile, but maybe you didn't do as good of a job as you thought you did, and the people didn't give you the feedback you want. Well, that's great. You go and just do a better version of the next time, or do some changes. And again, the person who's talking at 7 will be talking a lot about this, because that's how they set up their whole model, right? Is they have a whole kind of systematic learning approach where everything ends in impact. Even something small like publishing something on social media and trying to get a few likes on it, to something way bigger like putting on a rock concert or whatever. So, Gwendolyn, est-ce que tu as d'autres questions? Yes.
Yeah. Oui. Il semble que naturellement, tu avais ce goût d'apprendre, cette curiosité un peu naturelle. Tu dis qu'à l'école, tu apprenais vite, c'était comme naturel chez toi. Et donc, cette curiosité et d'être concerné par des problématiques plus importantes que juste faire des tâches basiques. Est-ce que cette curiosité, elle s'est développée? Et si elle s'est développée, est-ce qu'elle s'est développée à l'école, ou est-ce que finalement c'est un peu naturel chez toi? Et donc voilà, ça correspond déjà à un profil d'élèves qui sont un peu, enfin qui sont curieux, et donc où cette approche-là leur permettrait de nourrir aussi et d'être stimulés dans cette curiosité. Donc, en gros, est-ce qu'on l'apprend, cette curiosité, ou et on peut la développer, ou c'est un profil naturel?
Okay, I'm just going to resume this question, or sum up this question, because it's a great question. Gwendolyn wants to know if her Sandrine's curiosity for learning, her love of learning, was something that she developed, and if she did develop it, was it developed at school or maybe somewhere else? Was she born with it? And I would add to that question, is it a mixture of both of them? And I know it's hard to kind of tease out all that stuff, but what do you think, in terms of, giving advice to parents or teachers or even to students? For you, what worked best for you to kind of nurture and discover your curiosity for learning?
Again, it's such a great question. I think it's a mix of both. Of course, I think there's a part of personality and like self-development that goes into it. I was always a curious child. And I had really the privilege to be close to nature when I was young. We had a small cottage around the lake, and I actually spent all my summers there. And actually this connection to nature really impacted me, because at that time I was like maybe 8 or 9, and I was already walking with guides about recognizing the flora and the fauna, and just trying to learn more, and like just being amazed by everything. And of course I had the prerequisite to be curious. So of course, when I was in a good environment, because again, through the IB program in high school, it was like a bit more demanding than normal high school. So because of that, I felt stimulated, and I actually kept on going. But I think even if you're not curious in nature, I think it's a skill you can develop. And I think, and actually that's something I truly believe in, and I think we need currently to develop, or actually redevelop, the sense of wonder. And I think this goes in school, because I believe there's such wonder in our planet right now. And I know this sounds cheesy, but we're actually floating on a rock in a universe we don't understand, and we're made up out of stardust. And we actually had the opportunity to be living and breathing right now, and being able to speak to you. So I think by redeveloping this sense of wonder, we can actually create more connection and like love for life in general, but also for how our societies are created and how we live. And I think that when you start to ignite this sense of wonder, I think people will ultimately be more attached to learning more, because they will want to discover. And there's like tremendous amount of discoveries that still need to be made. And I think by developing that and nurturing that through school, and with that perspective in mind, I think it can make great change.
I, again, agree. I feel like this is, all the things you're saying are perfectly amazing. It's amazing to hear your take on it too. I agree. I think that's why I fight so hard. I've spent my entire career trying to change schools because I do believe, and there's plenty of other people who believe this, that when kids go to school, that curiosity, that excitement for learning goes down. And I'm not blaming, it's not a blame game. I'm not pointing any fingers, but I think that we all need to kind of take a step back and say, how is it that someone who's 5 years old, a kid who's 5 years old, who loves everything about learning, and then you ask them maybe around 9 or 10, do they like learning? And they're like, no. What happened there? Why? How is that even possible? So, and then you ask them at 17 and it's even lower. I mean, there's studies, plenty of studies to show about this. I'm not, just saying stuff to say stuff. I think we all kind of know it internally, but there's plenty of research that shows this. I fully agree. And the series of talks is really about this. And I honestly put you first because I wanted to set the table. Like, we have someone who is such a good learner. In my opinion, you're like the most expert of learners. You love, learning, you love helping, you love having a positive impact. It's like, how could school not have nurtured that in a way that's effective, that's positive, that's, amazing. And it did not answer those needs for you. So some people might love the current system, and I'm fine with that, but there has to be a recognition that the school is not serving everyone. And if you look at the statistics, plenty of kids drop out, but even the kids who stay in it, I'm not sure that it always answers all of their needs. And that is a large number of kids. So I believe that the number is very high. Like, I believe it's, over 50%. I know people don't necessarily agree with that, but that's my opinion. But even if it was 40%, that's a lot. That's a lot of kids who are not, falling in love with learning, feeling great about themselves, excited for the future, competent and ready to be a productive member of society. Again, I speak a lot. I'm sorry, but I feel that this is an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Gwenola, you always have amazing questions. If you got another one.
Non, j'ai pas plus de questions. Non, ben, c'est vraiment intéressant, c'est vraiment inspirant, et des témoignages comme ça sont nécessaires, vraiment. J'ai pas d'autres questions, mais j'aimerais ça que tu viennes à l'école faire la communication auprès des élèves, vraiment, rien que de partager un parcours.
But no, I think we could do more. I think we could do an impactful project with you, Sandrine. I think we'll show you some of this cool curriculum that they put together where it's really all about impact. And I think that you could be a part of it. I know you have too much on your plate, but we could bring you in and have you work just a little bit. Yeah. And I think the students could get inspired from you. And I think you could, I think that they might even inspire you a little bit, because I think that you're going to start to see that it's possible to see school and to work in a school differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love it.
Well, I don't want to just keep going. I mean, I could ask a million questions. In some ways, maybe we could just end this, the conversation, and I can put it up on a video, but maybe we could just chat a little bit afterwards. But I just want to thank you so much, Sandrine. Actually, what happened was, I'll give you the whole story of this. We were looking online. We were kind of having a class about environmental activism, and we saw this article that said, about students who had dropped out of school to be environmental activists. And I always love to hear about people who drop out of school. Sometimes it's a sad story and I want to find out more and help, but then sometimes it's an amazing story. Like, I want to go and do more and school wasn't helping me. So we called her up. She came in and spoke in one of our SAGEF classes, and she was insane, like amazingly good. And I was so blown away by it. And then I set the speaker series up, and honestly, one of the first people, probably the first person I thought of was, well, let's get Sandrine to talk about this. So you lived up to the hype from me. Hopefully other people out there listen to this and see what you've said and take this to heart and start to act, right? This idea of apathy and this idea of human error in this and how we can get involved. Like, hopefully the speaker series gives people motivation and the confidence to say that there are other ways and I can affect positive change. This is the whole idea. But here we have a perfect example of someone who the school system did not, serve entirely. And I think that there's a way of creating a school system that would serve all children, all kids, Sandrine especially. So that's my conclusion. I'm going to end the recording now, but Sandrine, if you could stay on afterwards, I'd love to keep chatting with you, because I would love to chat with you and Gwenola.